Living in harmony is possible if you know your emotions and how to handle them. In this podcast, Dr. Carmen Roman will share with you in an engaging way the current psychology by sharing herself or interviewing experts who will inspire you. Learn how to live a life of fullness and how to recover your emotional harmony with Dr. Roman. Welcome to Emotions in Harmony.
Hola amigos de Emotions in Harmony. This is Dr. Carmen Roman, and today I am going to bring to you an interview with Dr. Maoli. Dr. Maoli is a licensed clinical psychologist in Torrance, California. She's an expert in everything related to food, sex, and drugs. I guess she has really fun doing therapy. So, she's the host of the Sexology podcast. You can go on iTunes and look for Sexology podcast and enjoy her very well put and very deep and rich podcast. She has a Ph.D. in Clinical Psychology from Alien University, and she has a master's degree in psychology from Pepperdine University. She's definitely very well prepared to offer psychotherapy in English and Farsi. It was really a pleasure, this interview, so I will say no more, and here you have Dr. Maoli. Hello.
Hi, I can hear you well.
Hi, very well. Welcome, Dr. Maoli. I'm so happy to have you in this podcast. I was looking actually forward to it because we have a lot to talk about sex. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm excited.
For our listeners, just let me tell you that we just did an interview for Dr. Maoli's podcast on celibacy. So we were talking about not having sex. And now we will be talking about having sex. I will put you in the show notes the interview from her podcast, and I will put you a link for her podcast in general because it's an amazing podcast. I am learning a lot, Dr. Maoli. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for being generous and sharing those information with your wonderful listeners.
You know, my favorite so far is the one about mishmashing libido.
Absolutely. That's one of the challenges that many of my clients have. So I think it was very important to talk about it.
Yes, and we will get into a little bit today, but that was my inspiration to invite you today. So Dr. Maoli is the host of the podcast Sexology, and she has her private practice in California. I am very excited to have her here. Can you tell us a little more about you?
Absolutely. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I have a Ph.D. and I have a master's degree in clinical psychology. But what made me interested in the field of sexology is how limited information people have in this area. I personally, even as a psychologist, as someone who had multiple graduate degrees, I didn't know much about it until I got married. And actually, because of the treatment and support I got from my therapist, it helped me to be able to get more interested in this topic and learn more about myself. And that's why I'm so passionate now to share those information with other people.
And especially in my culture, probably it's similar in your culture, but in my culture is this kind of a secrecy around sexuality. So we don't talk that much about it.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that many parents, they don't talk about it because they're scared if they talk about it, they might encourage their teens to have sex, and they just keep it a secret. And the expectation is the moment that you're in a committed relationship or you're married, magically you would know what would work, what would be a good sex life.
Yes, that's correct. And then we start all the problems, because then, of course, we don't know. Of course, we are learning in the process. So thank you, because that will help so many couples to understand better their sexual life. What is the motivational quote that you have for us?
One of my all-time favorite quote is from Marcel Proust. It talks about the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. The reason I chose this one, because I know many of the couples who are coming in my practice, they're kind of frustrated because they don't think they can have hot sex in their marriage. And they think, okay, maybe that's something I need to seek out outside the relationship, or maybe that's not something I can explore more. But the key is to be able to rediscover yourself and your sexuality and see things from a different perspective.
So it's a journey for a long time, I guess, because we are always in self-discovery.
Absolutely. And unless we kind of try to find new aspect, new exciting things, or deepening our perspective of our partner, we might not be able to kind of explore and bring adventure and excitement to our sexual relationship.
You are so right. Yeah. Coming from you and coming as an expert, I think many people will be finding helpful. So it's okay to explore. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask something new in the relationship.
Absolutely. And I would say, I would go one step further and say it's essential, because if you are having the same kind of sexual relationships, the same kind of time with no changes for years and years and decades, it might get old. And then, when something becomes routine, it loses its excitement, and that can impact your well-being and also your attraction toward your partner.
Yes. So I think the next topic in that is shame. Do you find that your clients have shame about it, or they don't know how to get into these deep conversations?
Absolutely, because many of my clients, because I'm bilingual as well, they are coming, in my culture, I'm Iranian, and unfortunately many family, and also in our traditional culture, there is this sex negative attitude towards sexuality. And sometimes when I see clients, the couples who are coming in because of the sexual issues, when we're exploring, sometimes it's not about what's going on in the room with their wife or husband. It's the messages they got from their families, from their culture. For example, I was working with this newly married Iranian-American couple. And the issue was that the husband was not able to get aroused, and they were not sexually active prior to their marriage. And when we explored it, it came down to that he was feeling shameful around sexuality. He shared with me when he was a teenager, first time he masturbated, and his mother discovered, she gave him a booklet about the negative consequences of masturbation and how it's a sin and what might happen with your body, which is absolutely not correct. But that caused him to have a negative thought about his sexuality, and also feeling shameful about his arousal and getting his excitement. The other thing I feel the shame plays a role in it is about not being good enough, not having a perfect body for sex. I see that a lot, unfortunately, with my female clients, that they feel that they're shameful about who they are, and they feel, okay, I don't have certain kind of body, I don't have certain kind of feature, so they're not able to get in tune in the relationship and be present with your partner because how they feel shame about it. And obviously the other area which is your area of expertise, is when someone who would experience sexual assault, and the shame associated with that can impact their sexual functioning.
Yes, that's correct. It adds another layer of shame. It's interesting that we are human beings. We meditate, we eat, we take a shower, but we learn so few things about it. Like I always say, meditation is about breathing, and we learn very little about breathing. And our sexuality is about having sex, and we learn very little about having sex. So what are the common problems that you hear in your experience when couples are a little longer together? Like 2-3 years or 5 years or?
Absolutely. There are a number of things that I see, especially with my client. One thing is after the excitement and novelty, faded, or like we get into the routine of our day-to-day lives, people feel that they don't have that attraction, that desire to their partner. And that can be very scary because they say, I used to be very attracted to my partner. Now we have children. Now we are he's part of my day-to-day life, and I don't desire her or him. And one thing is very important to keep in mind that if you are constantly enmeshed together, you didn't keep your independence, that can be a challenge. Another thing that I see often is mismatched libido, as you mentioned. As couples, we are different. We have our different arousal, different desire level, and unless we talk about it, that can turn to a big issue. And unfortunately, it's normal to have different libido level, but not talking about it and not addressing it can lead to many issues around that. And I would say the third very common one is when individuals have experienced some sexual disorders and they haven't addressed it. And now because of that, they had some negative experiences and they stop having sex.
And they stop talking about it. Or?
Yeah. For example, one of my clients, they haven't had sex, like everything was great. And when we were talking about sexuality, the couple told me we didn't have sex for 5 years. And I asked them what happened. She said, and the husband was feeling so shameful about it, that he wasn't able to maintain his erection last few times that they had sex, and they just didn't talk about it afterward. And that aspect of relationship kind of died off.
And I guess it creates resentment or something must create in the middle of 5 years, yeah?
Absolutely. Resentment, whether he wants me or not, whether she desires me. And then there was an issue of the third person. It can complicate everything when we're not talking about these issues in our marriage openly.
Yes, that's right. So, Dr. Maoli, how the life changed for a couple when they have young age children?
I'm so glad you brought this topic up, because when I talk to my clients, one of the time that they say, their sexuality, their intimacy drastically changed is after having children, because the number of things usually happen when we're having children. One thing is, for many women, the sex can be painful, and if they don't address it, they don't learn the various way to cope with it, that can be kind of discouraging. The other thing is just the reality of day-to-day lives. Unless we put sexuality as a priority, it's not going to happen in reality and realistically, because you're exhausted, you're tired, you don't, it's like sex is not something that's on top of your mind. You want to attend to your children, and that can, the longer you wait, the more distance you might get from your partner. And one thing that's very important for people to keep in mind, that sexuality oftentimes is not separate from other aspects of relationship. So if you have issues around sexuality, if you're not intimate for a long time, this is going to impact the rest of the relationship. And the other thing that sometimes I hear, that because all the attentions are now toward the new baby or new child, our partner might feel secondary. They might not feel they're important for us. So it's very important for people to make sexual encounter as a priority, create some time for it. And again, unless you put it on a schedule and you kind of have this dedicated date times, I can guarantee that that's most likely not gonna happen.
Oh, I actually hear a lot of jokes about putting in the schedule and whatever, but you're right. It may be useful. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know that, again, I say it all the time to my client, and they say, we want sex to be spontaneous. I don't want a scheduled sexual encounter. But in reality, even if you think about the time that you were dating, you were you were planning to be intimate. Usually in sexual, especially in family life, it's so important. If you don't plan it, if your children are around, then what would be the chances of you would have enough time to be intimate and kind of nurture your sexual relationship in a routine way?
Wow, that's fresh news, because I always hear that about a joke and kind of you're right. The question comes like spontaneity. But you're right. It's like how I can be spontaneous and I don't even schedule myself time to relax.
Yeah, and I think one thing is for many women, especially, I feel the context is important. People need to be in the right context, meaning emotionally in their surrounding. If they don't feel emotionally they're ready, if there's not enough time for them to do a foreplay, they will not be necessarily ready for sexual encounter, especially in a longer term relationship that's been going on for years. So if you put it on a schedule, as you said, I know sometimes it's not necessarily as exciting, but if you put it in a schedule, it's going to be helpful.
Now that I am talking about the schedules and I'm listening to you, at some point, I think last year, I read somewhere in the internet that couples who send texts with emojis to each other during the day most likely will have sex.
I love that. And what's important is just like to nurture your sexual life with your partner. People think like sexuality starts the moment that you start the sexual foreplay, you are in the bedroom. But what I learned, what's important, and it's going to really be helpful for people, just think about foreplay start right after the sexual encounter that you had, meaning that the next day when you want to get intimate with your partner, it's very important to keep in touch. I know many of my clients, they send this cute sexy messages to their partner, so they keep the excitement and longing going. So by the time that it's nighttime that they want to get close, they already feel emotionally and physically attracted, and so they started the process from the morning.
That's very helpful, because it's not only talking about it, it's acting. Yeah, outside the bedroom also.
Yeah, and some people are more visual, some people are more into kind of hearing things. So it gives our partner opportunity to engage in the world of fantasy and kind of get aroused.
What they do when a couple is in deep trouble, which is a very sensitive topic. Yeah, we say already that. But how a person can bring to the partner the topic of, we need help.
Absolutely. I think that's another kind of a challenging conversation to have. One thing that the listeners, I encourage them to be aware and mindful of is that you need to get help as soon as possible. Sometimes I often hear people wait. On average, research shows that about 6 years, until they get support around their sexual disorder. And meanwhile, they might kind of experience some other added layers of frustration, resentment, infidelity. So it's important to have the conversation as early as possible. But I totally understand it's a very sensitive topic, and you need to approach it with the sensitivity that it requires. I encourage you, first thing is, do not talk about it in the bedroom. Some people kind of wait to after many years of frustration, they kind of blur out something after the unsuccessful sexual encounter. That's not a good way of approaching it. You want to be mindful. You want to talk about it outside the bedroom, because we want bedroom to be a place for individuals to kind of associate with good, happy memories. So you set some time aside to talk about it. Be gentle. I think it's very important to think about what do you want to get out of the relationship? Be courteous. Don't try to attack people. So if you kind of make a verbal and or physical attack sometimes, that wouldn't be helpful, or making threats. I know sometimes people say, I'm so fed up. If you don't do that, I'm going to leave you. If you make those kind of threats, you're not going to be heard. The partner going to get defensive. You're not going to get the outcome you want. So I encourage you to start with talking about something that you genuinely find that your partner is doing right. It could be in your day-to-day life, something very specific that you enjoy. Could be related to the sexuality, could not be related to sexuality. So start with that. And then talk about your feeling. And so before getting to the feeling part, the part I kind of like almost forgot is just like describing in a very neutral way how you're seeing the struggle. Kind of the same way that like a news anchor is describing the news. Kind of, I've noticed that last month when we were having this intimate relationship, we were not able to reach orgasm. Something like that, like a very kind of a non-blaming, very neutral tone. Describe what you see the problem is and share how you feel about it. Because if you say like, when you do that, I feel this, kind of like attacking the person, they might not hear you well. But if you kind of share that, I feel I would like to work on my sexual life, or I feel not desired when I'm not able to kind of have the sexual relationship I want. So kind of talking about how you are feeling, kind of starting with that, and kind of offer the solution, kind of saying, okay, I'm thinking maybe we can talk about it with so-and-so doctor whose specialty is in sex therapy or pastor, or we can do so-and-so workshop. And also, it's important to kind of provide opportunity to hear your partner and be curious and open about their feedback and be interested in that. Because if you genuinely listen to your partner point of view, opinion, and reason, you kind of encourage them and invite them to do the same. So these are few of the things I recommend my clients to do. But again, I absolutely understand it's not an easy conversation. People feel easily their shame, they can get triggered, and also they can get defensive. So just like it's important to create a safe space so you both get opportunity to explore it.
Well, you have been very generous with your with describing what is the process to talk to the partner. I think you have a talent to talk about these difficult topics.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think our listeners will appreciate that, because it's true. It's like step by step out of the bedroom. Wow, thank you, Dr. Maoli. That's very helpful.
Thank you so much. And I know it's challenging. If it was easy, people wouldn't wait 6 years to kind of start getting help.
Yes, that's a good point. Wow, 6 years is a lifetime in a couple relationship. Yeah. So, doctor, are you ready to be on the spot?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready.
Let's put doctor on the spot. So what is a daily habit that you believe contributes to a healthy sexual relationship?
One habit I think is very important, to compliment your partner. Kind of tell them what do you desire in them. Kind of have this ongoing conversation so you can kind of give them feedback on the physical appearance you appreciate in them, in their personality you appreciate in them, so you can build up on those positivity that you can kind of benefit from in future.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. What is one online resource that has been valuable to you or your clients in those difficult moments?
So I would kind of like plug in my podcast, like Sexology, because I try to find, like, give awareness and education about the topic that will be helpful for many people and that they're struggling with. Can I also offer another resource? So that's not mine. So there's this wonderful blog called thedirtynormal.com, which is done by Dr. Nagoski. And if people are into reading, that's another good resource.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree. Definitely have your podcast as a primary resource. And of course, you share more resources in your podcast, yeah?
Thank you. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And we will put the book into the show notes as well. What is one tip that you will give to somebody who is thinking about starting to go to therapy or to do their healing journey as a couple?
I think one important thing is kind of do your research. Kind of think about what would work for you, because I feel with therapy, the fit is extremely important. So you need to find someone that is kind of a good match for what you need. And sometimes it takes more than one attempt. So don't get discouraged. I know sometimes people coming in to my practice and they say, we had one experience 5 years ago that wasn't good for us as far as therapy and we gave up. I think just if you find, it's like finding your mate. So the match is really important.
Okay, perfect. So last question. Imagine you have only $200 and your laptop. What is the first step you will take toward starting your journey for a healthy sexual relationship?
There are a number of different ways that people can explore that, but I share with you what I recommend, especially for the couples that they've been in their long-term marriage. There are 2 books that are relatively inexpensive and they're very helpful. One is Passionate Marriage, and the other one is Come As You Are. So this would give people good foundation about like basics around sexuality around in the marriage, and also what kind of resources they can use to address them. And based on those kind of recommendations, the book, they can get to see what might be the next step for them.
Okay, yeah, well. Doctor, has been amazing talking to you, and you made it so easy, this difficult topic that I think people can wait 6 weeks instead of 6 years.
Thank you so much for your generosity and comment.
Tell us a little bit about your practice.
So I have a private practice in Los Angeles in South Bay area in Torrance. I help people with struggles around sexuality, eating disorders, and addictions. And I also offer online counseling. And this is something I feel very passionate because of the struggles that I went and experienced myself. And that's why I love helping people to navigate these issues and create a life that's worth living for them.
Excellent. So you also provide online counseling. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I found it very helpful, especially in the traffic in California. It's hard sometimes to get to the offices.
And also, it's possible if somebody is outside California to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. Internationally, I can do work with people, but I feel outside in the States, because of the limitation in our licensure, I cannot see people in other states. Yes.
Yes, because I'm thinking a lot of people in Mexico who are fully bilingual will be able to benefit from your specialty, because it's not as easy to find a sexologist.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy, and it would be my honor to help people all around the world.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Maoli. I really appreciate your generosity and all your insights about this topic. And we will put everything in the show notes for our listeners to keep track of what we said. Anything else you want to add?
No, thank you so much. This was absolutely a pleasure. And thank you so much for providing awareness around this important topics.
Okay. Well, until the next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Join us for the next podcast of Emotions in Harmony. We hope you have more tools to put what you have learned here into practice. Visit carmenroman.net, where you can be in touch with Dr. Roman.